I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show. Pluto. 3 billion miles later, 9.5 years later, NASA's New Horizons probe, its robot, closest pass to Pluto, traveling 31 miles per hour. New Horizons came within 7,700 miles. That event and the significance of it, we will explore with Bob Zimmerman today and probably for the rest of the century with Bob Zimmerman and our successors, because this is a new thing. The only thing new to all of us is the history you don't know. Well, you just learned something new that we never saw in history. What the surface of the planet Pluto looks like, what it means, Charon, its double planet system, all that is new, new, new. Bob Zimmerman, he keeps the website Behind the Black. A very good evening to you, Bob. The moment today, 3 billion miles later, I want to start the visit, the probe in 2006 and the outbound to Pluto. What have we been witnessing, Bob? What is the excitement? Why the ninth largest object in the solar system? Why is it important? Good evening to you.
Good evening, John. Well, first of all, this completes the human race's first inventory of our solar system. We've now taken a look at all the major bodies in the solar system, a Kuiper Belt object, comets, asteroids, a whole bunch, big and small, every planet, every moon around every planet. We've now gotten a close look at everything, and this completes it. For the U.S., it's kind of nice, as one article said, we've completed the full set. We've collected it all. We've been to every single planet, and Pluto was the last one. It had not been seen, and this was it's very far away and very difficult to get to, and. Once again, to give you a sense of perspective, light traveling at 186,000 miles a second, it could circle the globe. What is that, about, 10 times, 8 times in a second? It took 4.5 plus hours for the signals from New Horizons to get back to us. That's how far away it is. It's very remote, very, very difficult challenge to make this happen. And it took a lot of negotiating right off the bat to get the project okayed by NASA a decade plus ago. And when they finally said yes, it was launched a relatively light payload on a relatively heavy rocket, so it could get it going as fast as possible, so it would get there finally within our lifetimes.
A peculiarity of these last hours is that there was radio silence, reminding me, Bob, of those days, and you've written about this in Apollo 8, when there was radio silence. The signal from the Apollo with the astronauts on board would not be able to connect to Earth until it came back from the other side of the moon. It was always very high drama. So this was something approaching that 21.5-hour communication blackout, because, as I understand it, the antenna on New Horizons cannot turn. They have to turn the whole craft. Is that why it was darkened out?
It's complicated. There's a whole bunch of different reasons. The most important one of all was that they wanted to focus 100% the spacecraft on gathering data during this very short period of time. And yes, if they wasted any time sending data back, they lose time in doing observations. That's the first thing. But there's more to it than that, John. The deep space network that's used to communicate with these planetary missions is somewhat limited in its capacity. And so they only allocate so much time to every mission. You've got Mars missions, Saturn missions, Jupiter missions. You've got a lot of probes out there, and so they had only so much allocated time, and it was more efficient for them to wait. And so what that meant is that today, during the flyby, there was no communications from Pluto. The NASA put together a whole slate of activities all day. But what it was just filler, in a sense, while they waited. And they were waiting not just because they were having this blackout to do data collection, but even when the data collection ended, they then had to wait 4.5 hours for that signal to get back from Pluto in their log sheets, John. It's very funny.
I want to get to speculation, Bob.
Okay.
We have to make a note here. There was risk in this flyby, and there remains risk. Because of why? What is the risk for the satellite?
Well, all right, the spacecraft is traveling through the Pluto area. It has 5 moons. they were unsure if there would be a lot of debris around the planet. All their observations, and they looked very closely, said that they were pretty safe. But, there's an unknown here. A single speck in the wrong place.
And the 5 moons of Pluto are formed from detritus of a planetary collision, so it's not far-fetched to imagine there are asteroids in the neighborhood.
Well, it's not so much a planetary collision, John, but you're talking about the Kuiper Belt. This is an area of space where there's a lot of debris. Well, it's not a lot of debris, but there is debris. And Pluto is a crowded environment right around it because of its roots and where it came from and the pieces that are there. So that was an unknown. They've gotten past that, right?
So the maximum point of concern was when it passed through the plane, where they expected the most...
When they came close to Pluto, yes.
All right, 8:52:37. Bob has posted it on Behind the Black. That is the moment itself, East Coast time. East Coast time, 8:52:37. And in the day waiting, Bob, you have a very happy post on Behind the Black about speculation so far of what we've seen. The most recent image is from, 400,000 miles out, so we'll get a lot better imagery. I've seen the example of what we're going to get. If you look at Earth from the distance of 7,700 miles, they have a camera there that can acquire very detailed showing of the New York Harbor. You can see the inlets. You can see, you can't quite see cars driving, but we'll see great detail of the geological features. What do we guess so far of what we've seen, Bob?
Well, they've also released during the day, while they were waiting, some of their later images, the very last ones before the blackout. And they also released a false color image, which I've got posted on Behind the Black, which brings out the geological differences on the surface. And the speculations and those geological differences suggest to planetary geologists that Pluto's surface and Charon's surface have been paved over in some way. There is actual physical activity going on, geological activity of some kind. It either could be from underground, churning up from below, some kind of volcanic activity with water, or it could be atmospheric processes because Pluto's atmosphere appears and disappears as it orbits the sun and the seasons change. There's no way to know at this point. We have to get a little bit better data, and we'll get that over the next months. But right now, that's the speculation that this is a planet, and I use that word very intentionally, that has geological processes changing its surface. For one thing, it's not as heavily cratered from these images than others.
I cannot see anything like the surface of the moon. Nothing.
No, it doesn't. And it does have what appear to be might be craters, but they have been changed. They have been eroded. They've been covered in some manner. They're not as distinct. You don't see sharp features like on the moon or Mercury. The other thing about it is that this is a Kuiper Belt object. We've never gotten a close look at objects that far out in the solar system, and their formation process could be somewhat different than the terrestrial planets close to the sun. And the lower gravity with the sun and the lack of, heavy material when they formed, it was much more dense, much more concentration of material in the inner solar system. We're looking at different kinds of objects, and it looks different. There's no question of that. Charon looks different from Pluto. They're very different from each other.
And they're in a binary relationship. In other words, the center of gravity is above the surface of Pluto.
That's correct. This is really a double planet. I use that word intentionally. They're both spherical, and they both show evidence of activity.
Charon got just promoted to a planet. Okay, fine. Little bitty planet, but it's a planet. Okay, fine. Double planet system. And Bob, another thing, I read this, and it was exciting. This is an example of how planets go around a binary star system. We can see because there's chaos in their mathematics, but they'll be able to figure it out.
Yes, it's even more complicated because you've got 3 other moons. Now, the other moons are 4 other moons. Their other moons are kind of small, so they have less influence, but this is a very chaotic, complicated system, and to study it would teach us a great deal about a lot of different things.
How many years will we get information from New
It's going to take, they say, about a year or 2 before they can download all the data on the spacecraft, because, one, they don't have it's a slow download rate for such a distance, and secondly, they only have so much time allocated to them on the Deep Space Network, so they're going to do it step by step. They're going to get the best images right away, and then it's gonna come to us bit by bit.
8:52:37 East Coast time, reacquisition of New Horizons signal, and it will not fall silent again for the rest of its trip outbound into the Kuiper Belt and beyond. Bob Zimmerman, he keeps the website Behind the Black, and Bob said the Deep Space Network is very busy. When we come back, we're going to speak about one or more of the things that are taking time to transmit back to Earth. The NASA probe Dawn, in orbit around Ceres, has been sending information about those bright spots. What are they? I'm John Batchelor.